Running Through Time isn't about Forrest's life. It's about how this movie, seemingly simple and sentimental, became one of the most groundbreaking pieces of cinema ever made. This is the story of transformation, not just of a man, but of an entire industry that didn't see it coming. It's a journey through emotions, art, innovation, and cultural shifts, all hidden within a film that many dismissed as just a feel-good story. If you're passionate about cinema that moves the heart and shapes the industry, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We explore the untold stories, the filmmaking craft, and the emotional truths behind unforgettable films. The film no one believed in. In the early 1990s, when pitch meetings were dominated by fast cars, testosterone-fueled action heroes, and high-concept thrillers, a script about a slow-speaking man from Alabama hardly seemed like a contender. Studios passed on it. Executives scratched their heads. And even those who read the script wondered, what is this movie really about? That book was Forrest Gump by Winston Groom, a quirky, sprawling tale told in first person with bizarre events and outrageous satire. The novel's tone was far less sentimental than what would eventually appear on screen. It was cruder, messier, even more absurd. But deep inside, there was a pulse, a core of emotional truth that couldn't be ignored. Producers Winnie Feinerman and Steve Tisch saw something others didn't. They believed in the human story underneath the chaos. They fought for the rights, courted studios, and eventually brought on screenwriter Eric Roth. Roth stripped the narrative down to its essence. A man who witnessed history with innocent eyes and somehow influenced it without meaning to. Even when Tom Hanks came on board, fresh off Philadelphia, but not yet an international megastar, there were concerns. The story had no antagonist, no major showdown, no massive twist. What it had was emotion, honesty, and a lead character who just kept running, both literally and figuratively. And yet, when production began, no one could predict the cultural storm that was about to arrive. The man who kept running. Forrest wasn't the kind of character Hollywood typically embraced. He didn't shoot a gun. He didn't chase women. He didn't try to change the world. He simply lived through it. But that's precisely what made him unforgettable. His journey from leg braces to marathon running, from shrimp boats to the White House lawn, wasn't just a quirky sequence of events. It was symbolic. Forrest was every man, every woman, every child trying to make sense of a chaotic world. He was bullied for being different. He was underestimated by everyone. But he kept going. His lack of intellectual prowess was never a punchline. It was a reflection of how often society overlooks the wisdom of simplicity. Forrest didn't overthink. He didn't judge. He loved deeply, acted loyally, and remained steady even when the world spun out of control. And that made his running more than movement. It was philosophy. When everything around him crumbled, when Jenny left, when Bubba died, when his mother passed, Forrest ran. Not to escape, but to feel something real. That's why audiences connected with him. He was pure. He was real. And he reminded us all that moving forward, even when you don't know why, is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. Behind the magic curtain, if the story was heart, the visuals were the veins through which that heart pulsed. Few viewers realize how much Forrest Gump innovated behind scenes. Long before CGI became a crutch for spectacle, Zemeckis and his team used it as an invisible tool. The feather at the start and end of the film wasn't just poetic. It was one of the most complex sequences to create. Filmed using practical effects, subtle wire work, and digital layering, it set the tone. This would be a movie where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The famous handshake between Forrest and President Kennedy used groundbreaking digital compositing. Hanks's movements were mapped and integrated into archival footage, with voice impersonation and lip syncing added in post-production. This technique had never been used at such scale before. Gary Sinise wore blue stockings during scenes where Lieutenant Dan had lost his legs. Frame by frame, the effects team erased his lower limbs, replaced them with empty pant legs or prosthetic stumps, and seamlessly matched lighting and shadows to create a realistic illusion. And then there was the ping pong. Every ball you see is CGI. Every swing is choreographed to invisible timing. Hanks mimed every shot without a real ball, trusting the rhythm and direction of the scene. These techniques didn't just serve the film. They quietly set new standards for Hollywood. The heart in the casting. It's often said that casting can make or break a film. In the case of Forrest Gump, it defined it. Tom Hanks was never meant to play a typical lead. But here, his mix of vulnerability and quiet dignity made Forrest feel human, not mythical. He based the cadence of Forrest's voice on Michael Connor Humphreys, the child actor who played young Forrest. This created a rare continuity between child and adult versions of a character. It made the evolution feel organic. Gary Sinise, best known for theater, brought raw emotion and grit to Lieutenant Dan. He wasn't just a foil for Forrest. He was a man consumed by anger, self-pity, and eventually, healing. Michael T. Williamson's Bubba gave the film its soul. His wide-eyed optimism and shrimp obsession became unforgettable. But it was his tragic death that brought one of the movie's most heartbreaking lines. Bubba was my best good friend. And Sally Field? She brought grace, toughness, and quiet power to the role of Mrs. Gump, delivering lines that would shape a generation. You have to do the best with what God gave you. Even Elvis Presley made an appearance, voiced not by the actor on screen, but by Kurt Russell. Every casting decision was intentional, adding depth and authenticity to what could have easily become caricature, changing the culture without trying to. When Forrest Gump was released, no one predicted the cultural wave it would unleash. Life is like a box of chocolates became a universal metaphor. Run, Forrest, run. Enter the global lexicon. The smiley face, the SH*T happens bumper sticker, all became pop culture relics, tied forever to a single film. But the influence ran deeper. It sparked conversations about destiny versus free will, about disability and representation, about love, loss, and the nature of happiness. Schools began using the film to teach history. Therapists used it as a model for discussing grief and healing. Veterans saw themselves in Lieutenant Dan. Survivors saw themselves in Jenny. And dreamers saw themselves in Forrest. The soundtrack sold millions of copies, introducing younger generations to classic American rock and folk. It wasn't just a movie, it was a time capsule. At the 67th Academy Awards, Forrest Gump took home 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Director. It beat films that critics hailed as more artistic or edgy. And yet, It endured longer in the hearts of audiences. Why? Because Forrest Gump didn't try to impress. It simply told the truth, gently, honestly, and without cynicism. The legacy that never stopped running. 30 years later, Forrest Gump still plays on cable, is still taught in schools, and is still the comfort movie of millions. Tourists flock to Chippewa Square in Savannah, where Forrest waited on that bench. Props from the film sit in museums. The feather remains a metaphor for fate in motion. But beyond nostalgia, the film left a blueprint. It proved that emotionally rich stories could sit at the table with blockbusters. It paved the way for movies like The Green Mile, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and The Pursuit of Happiness. Films that dared to feel in an industry often ruled by adrenaline. Forrest Gump wasn't just about running. It was about continuing. Continuing despite setbacks, despite trauma, despite how absurd life can be. And maybe that's why it still connects, because we're all running through time, trying to make sense of the chaos. In a noisy world, Forrest Gump chose stillness. In a cynical era, it chose sincerity. And in a medium obsessed with spectacle, it chose soul. The film asked nothing from its audience except to listen, to feel, to believe in the idea that a simple man with a big heart could show us what really matters. And somehow in doing that, it didn't just tell a story. It made history. So if this film touched you like it did millions of others, keep its spirit alive. Be kind, be present, and keep running forward. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that run deeper than you ever imagined.